Welcome to the workshop. Before mapping out your beneficiary journeys, we need to do some homework. That is finding your main characters for your journeys. And in this case, we call that a personas. A persona is simply a person that can represent your target audience. That person will become your main characters for the story. We want to give this character a life, a story, and a personalities, so that you can really put yourself into his shoes and to walk his journeys. And sometimes you may find that it's very difficult to hunt down to one specific personas because you have so many different types of beneficiaries. And there are two possibilities that why you end up in here. If it's the first case, that actually your multiple personas are very similar. For example, you're serving a beneficiaries of elderlies, and some people live in one-tai-shins and some people live in admiralties. Pretty much they share a lot of commonalities, only their living locations are differences. And in this case, we call them it's the same personas because you still tell the same story. They have the same story to tell. They're the same type of people. But sometimes you really have different personas. For example, if you're in environment protection organizations and provide garbage recycling services for schools and restaurants at the same time, you can see that school users and restaurant users are quite different, and they will have a different story to tell. Whenever you find you have different story to tell, that means that you have different main characters, different personas in this case. And for this, that will be quite difficult for you to write a journeys. So just pick one. Pick one that interests you most, because what interests you most will interest your audience as well. And this is how you make them impressive. And for personas, make it as lively as possible. So how does it work? It's like when you write a story, you're like painting the character, telling your audience what your main character is like. First, give him a name. It can be any names that you like. Just like when you tell a story, your main character have a name, right? You're not going to call him A or B or something. You'll call him Tom and Mary, something that is more like a human. Secondly, you give him a face. Give him photos. You can go online and search some photos for that, or you can draw it yourself. And by this, we give him a face that people can picture and think about how your beneficiaries actually looks like, what they're like. And in about, it's more like a brief summary of what your persona is like. It's like when you tell a story to someone else, that person will know what exactly your main character is like. As for demographic information, as any demographic information that is about the persona that is relevant to your services or products. And in this case, you may find a lot of questions for that because it's quite vague, right? Later on, I will give you an example which will clear the picture for you a bit. Next is the needs part. It's more like what these personas look for, what is their expectations. And after this, we'll figure out the frustrations part. This is derived from the needs. It is the gap between what these personas expect and what they actually get in real life. Because frustrations actually comes from the gap in expectations. Think about sometimes that when you want to drink a coffee and someone brings you a milk. So that's quite different. Even though there's nothing wrong with the milk, you will feel a bit disappointed when you get the milk at the end, when you're expecting a coffee. So we write it down, what is the gap there, what is the problem they're facing, and what are the pains in the frustration sections. And then the last part is the behavior. This is the general behavior of your personas. It's like, what is he like? And I'll give you an example later on as well. And the last part is the feelings. It's like the general feelings about these personas. Is he happy, sad, bored, grumpy? It's more emotional levels of these personas. So to give you a better idea of what is a personas look like, here is an example. Our example organization is an NGO providing transportation services for elderlies. And they have interviewed 5 of their beneficiaries and come up with the persona below. They called him Chou Gei. So it's quite a typical Chinese name, right? So you kind of know this more like an elderly, an old age person. And they give him a face of an elderly with a walking stick. So you know that they are serving people with not that good physical mobility. It's like an elderly with a walking aid. And at about, you know that this is a grumpy old man who is a very frequent user of the organizational services. For the demographic sections, you can see that all this information is related to your services. So for your case, it can be different factors. Just depends on what you need for that. And in here, because we're serving elderlies, we want to know about their age, their occupations, and do they have financial aids? Are they living with their families, or do they have any medical conditions? These are all the things that is related to your organizations. And it's more like when you tell a story about what your beneficiary looks like. This kind of factors is something that people can have the pictures of what they are like. At the needs part, so you can write down what he needs when he visits the hospital. Then the frustration part is what his pain points. And then for the general behavior, this is something quite a bit more difficult in the whole sections. But pretty much it is similar to the demographics informations. Pick the factors that will interact or have relevant information with your services or organizations. For example, in this case, we want to know if Child K is having very strong physical abilities or having problem when he walks. So we write it down. General behavior is like mobility level is low. He's not really capable of walking. And we want to know that is he close with his family? Because if he is not that close, then he will need our services more than other people. And that is the reason why you're serving them and why your NGO is so special and stand out from other people. Because you're targeting this kind of niche beneficiaries. And then lastly is the current feelings. Are you helping a grumpy people, a happy people? Or are you turning their journey from unpleasant to happy? These are all the factors that can help you to stand out from other NGOs. And that's the reason why you need to do homework and get your personas done before the workshop. To summarize, for the personas, give him a name, give him a face by finding some photos, give him a about, so everyone can grasp an idea of what your personas looks like. Tell us more about his or her demographics informations. Tell us what he needs and what is his pain points. Tell us what his general behavior and what does he feels. Is he happy or sad? So good luck with your homework and see you soon.